going into rookie minicamp, it was such a cool experience, going into an NFL facility. And it's kind of just the dream just to be able to walk into there and you belong in there. But it was also extremely stressful. Like every snap you take, every little warm-up snap you take is just being watched like a hawk. So I remember going out for warm-ups and stretching out, warming up, and taking my very first warm-up snap. And it was a little bit low at the knees. And the coach is like, "Yeah, get that up." And my thought was, "Yeah, I will. Let me get a couple and I'll be back into, my prime shape, I guess." But everything was just watched. And you know what? Is very much criticized, but not very coached. So they would tell you if you're doing it wrong, but they didn't know how to tell you if you were doing it right.
Hello, this is the Healthy Wealth Experience, and I'm your host, Chris Hall. I am super excited today to have with me Coach Kyle Stelter. And if you would like to know a little bit more about football and long snapping and recruiting, then this is going to be a great show for you. Coach, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. I love talking long snapping and football and recruiting. So we're in the right place today, I think.
Right on. Yeah, it's great. Basically, you're a long snapping coach. And so, I think a lot of people out there would think like, oh, so what team do you coach for? Can you explain a little bit about like what you do and how you got where you got?
Yeah, so I'm a private long snapping coach. It's a job that I really had to invent for myself. I went to school to be a physical education teacher and then was teaching adapted physical education for about 6 years while also coaching on the side, just kind of as a hobby and, kind of building this business. And then 2020, I decided to just kind of go full time into snapping coaching, and it's worked out really well, and families are doing well, and everything's just going in a good direction right now. So I guess to back up a little bit, I learned how to snap in high school, not very well, just enough to be sufficient, and eventually just kind of didn't end up loving it. So one day at practice when I was in high school, I intentionally screwed up to get pulled because I didn't want to be the long snapper anymore. So I threw a couple over the holder's head. I got pulled. Great day. My backup went in, and I got to play guard on field goal, which was so much easier. You just stood there and took a hit.
So
Yeah.
true.
So interesting, right? So, and then after that, I knew I didn't want to be done playing football. So I was going to go play college football, and I was pretty determined to do so. And all of my high school coaches told me that you should probably work on your long snapping if you want to do that. Because at the time I was probably about 200 pounds and an offensive lineman. I just wanted to go play. I didn't care what I did. I thought I was maybe going to be a linebacker. So the first school I went to, I tried to play linebacker, was also snapping, didn't end up seeing the field that year. Then I transferred and was still the long snapper, but didn't see the field until my junior year. So I played my junior and senior year. During that time was also trying to play tight end and defensive end. In my senior year, my coaches kind of pulled me off to the side and said, "You know what, you're pretty good at this. We value you at the long snapping position. We don't want you to play another position so you don't get hurt." And going from screwing up on purpose to being told to only be a long snapper was a great day, and then probably one of the worst days because all I knew is I didn't want to be just a specialist because they don't do anything. They just hang out on the other field. It looks boring. It wasn't exciting. So that ended up being kind of a downer for about a week. And then about a week into it, I decided, this is pretty cool. I don't have to ram my head into other guys all day. Practice wasn't as hard. I get to just hang out and work on my craft. So it ended up turning out to be a good thing. And so I finished up my college career at Wisconsin River Falls, which is a Division III school. Ended up playing semi-pro for a little bit just to kind of stay relevant and stay active because I knew I didn't want to be done playing football after that. And during that time, I was going to workouts and tryouts. I ended up being rated the #1 free agent long snapper in the nation, got into the UFL for a season, and then in 2014 was able to get a tryout with the New York Jets and then a rookie minicamp invite from the New York Jets as well. So really worked my way up, and definitely some ups and downs throughout that, but snapping has definitely taken me a lot further than I ever expected to be.
Now, so when you were with the Jets and stuff like that, how competitive was that? Like how many snappers did they bring in for those kinds of camps?
Yeah, so the first workout they brought in 4 of us. It was me from Wisconsin River Falls, a snapper from Colorado State, a snapper from Rutgers, and Florida State. So already kind of heading into that, it was a little intimidating because, all these other guys had played big time football and I had not, but I had also had that confidence of I'd played in the UFL and I'd beaten out some really good snappers to be in that league. I had been rated very highly in some free agent workouts I'd been in. But going into that workout, they kept two of us, two of the guys that got cut, two of us but got brought back for rookie minicamp. And going into rookie minicamp, it was such a cool experience, going into an NFL facility, and it's kind of just the dream just to be able to walk into there and you belong in there. But it was also extremely stressful. Like every snap you take, every little warm up snap you take is just being watched like a hawk. So I remember going out for warm ups and stretching out, warming up, and taking my very first warm up snap. And it was a little bit low at the knees. And the coach is like, "You got to get that up." And my thought was, "Yeah, I will. Like, let me get a couple and I'll be back into, my prime shape, I guess." But everything was just watched. And you know what? Is very much criticized, but not very coached. So they would tell you if you're doing it wrong, but they didn't know how to tell you if you were doing it right. And I think that was an eye opener for me to kind of really understand that there's not a lot of help for this position. And I had been coaching it for a while, but maybe not as detailed as I wanted to be. So I started to think about, the kickers were getting really detailed coaching after practice, watching film, breaking it down, the tiniest little changes to their plant foot and how they swing and how they contact. And snappers, you're good. We don't need anything from you, right? Just keep getting better. So that kind of opened my eyes. I want to get more information and understand the why and the how. And, throughout my background of, playing football and also going into physical education, you take classes for biomechanics and kinesiology and anatomy
Okay.
and things like that. So we learned about all these rules to movement through those classes. And I would see that I was also a track and field thrower. So I'd see that at practice there where we'd do drills and we'd understand the movement. And then I go to football practice and it was like the rules didn't apply to us. Just do it better, don't screw up. So it was really an interesting dynamic to go from understanding why and how to don't suck. And that didn't really sit well
Don't
with me because,
suck.
yeah, and I'm just kind of the person that really needs to know why. If somebody gives me a piece of advice or wants me to do something, even if it's the right thing to do, I want to know why. Is there an explanation behind it? And, what's the reasoning? So I think that was something that really motivated me to develop this business into what it is today. Kind of a little bit of perfectionism, and a little bit of just curiosity about movement and coaching and always learning how to do things better.
That's great. That's great. So with this specialty, so obviously you and I know each other. My son has been going to you since the eighth grade. He's now a senior, being recruited nationwide. I got your name from Jacob Bobemoyer, who's also been on the show. He was at the East West Shrine game when I was assisting there on the East team. And so we just kind of just started talking and stuff like that. Originally, I thought my son was going to be like a slot receiver because he was a pretty tall, skinny kid. And then right around the same time COVID hit, he had his growth spurt. And not only did he get taller, but he got bigger. Like he's pretty thick. And I'm like, well, he's not tall enough to be a tight end. He's not got the mentality for a middle linebacker spot. Like, what are we going to do with this kid? Because, when he came to me, like every kid who's 10 or 11 years old is like, Dad, I want to be in the NFL. I'm like, yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
Don't we
welcome to
all?
the club.
So that made me think of my relationship with Jacob. I called Jacob. Jacob said, "You got to call Coach Stelter." And that's kind of how we started out. I do remember like the evolution of this sport has happened while we're doing it together. When we first started, I remember you telling me the average NFL snapper had a dad bod and he would just kind of trot out on the field and snap the ball and then kind of trot back out. And now you've got guys like Jacob, Christian Kuntz, Luke Rhodes. I mean, these guys are animals and they're just athletic specimens who also snap the ball. So can you kind of walk us through the process of how the positions changed so much just in the last 5 years?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's been morphine for even longer than that. So, as we go through the years, mostly it was position players that would snap for the team. If you could do it, awesome, just get in there and make it happen. Then it turned into when I was in high school and coming up through college, it was starting to become more of a specialty. More kids were going to camps for it and learning how to do it and getting scholarships for it. I think that's kind of when it started to become a little more prevalent. But it was still the demographic of guys that weren't big enough, fast enough, strong enough to play another position, so they snapped. Recently, it's been kind of going towards swinging towards more of like a linebacker build who can do both. They could play a position, they could snap, but they're choosing to snap because of longevity, because they enjoy it, because it'll take them further. So we'll take Luke Rhodes, for example, was a linebacker at William & Mary, was not a snapper there, ended up getting picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a linebacker and then was cut and then got picked up by the Colts. And while he was there, just kind of told the guys that he could snap. And after watching him do it a few times, told him, you have potential here. And if you tell us that you're going to work on it, we'll get rid of the other guy and we'll give you a chance to, you know, earn the job and keep the job. So he said in that moment, he said, yeah, get rid of him. I'll take the job. And that's when we got connected. We got in touch through a client of mine who was at a gym that Luke was at. And, basically what happened is Luke sent me a clip of film. I gave him a voiceover kind of explaining what I could do to help him. And we instantly just started working together. And I think it's been 9 years since then, but he's made a lot of progress. And he went from not snapping in college to being a Pro Bowler to being the highest paid long snapper in the NFL. And just setting a new precedent for the snapper market, which is really cool. So he's been innovating and building the position.
I check out his Instagram, stuff like that, and I mean he is a physical specimen. Like that guy definitely looks like he could still play linebacker.
Yeah,
And then talking about that same position, Jacob Boomware from the Las Vegas Raiders right now, like he looks like he's like I know he played linebacker in college too, and he has a similar story where he
absolutely.
was playing linebacker in college and then he got kind of tapped for that. Can you kind of go through that story with us?
Yeah. So Jacob is probably one of my favorite stories to tell. And I'm sure he doesn't love when I tell it, but essentially, he was a linebacker and long snapper, and he did snap in college. I think we had met his junior year. So he came up to Wisconsin his junior year and told me that he wanted to play in the NFL. We had our first lesson. And basically, my reaction was, I'm glad that you're motivated, but there's a lot of work to do. Like, I don't know if you're ready. And I was skeptical of, is this going to happen or not? Essentially, he wasn't great. So he worked on it. A couple months later, he came back and he had improved. I think we had met a few times leading up into his senior season, but eventually, his senior season came around. He had been continuously improving and had been motivated to do it. And I had a connection with the East West Shrine game, and they had one of my other snappers slated to play in their game, but he had torn his ACL. So they called me up and said, "Hey, we need a snapper to replace this other guy." And I just pitched Jacob. I was like, he's a linebacker. I think guys are starting to like that build, that movement style from a player. And so I gave him his name and just kind of crossed my fingers and said, "Please don't screw this up." And he went in, and Jacob told me that one of his first snaps was not his best snap. And I think it was to AJ Cole, who's his current punter with the Raiders right now.
Yeah,
And
it
he's the
was.
guy, and AJ was not happy that he got a left-handed snapper that was not perfect, and was upset about it. So Jacob went on, played in the Shrine game, did well, got picked up by the Broncos, played for them for I think 3 seasons before he broke his finger, and then they got moved to the Raiders. So the Raiders picked him up, and he's been playing there ever since. But now he's reunited with AJ Cole, who initially was not a fan, but now I think they're pretty close and everything's going well for him there. But it was definitely a crazy story going from not being very good and being skeptical about, his potential to, man, he's been playing in the NFL for a long time now and having a lot of success. The cool part is him and all these other guys that I train are continuously hungry for improvement. They're not just coasting on what they've done in the past. They want to continue to improve.
What's your tagline on that? You say that quite a bit in your posts.
Go unnoticed.
Well, that's I love that one too.
That's one of them.
When I was talking about is seeking
Chase
perfection.
perfection. Yes. Chase
Seeking
perfection, go
perfection.
unnoticed. Those are kind of two of my big slogans. My big thing with chasing perfection is, not everybody's a perfectionist, but I want everybody to be held to a higher standards. Every opportunity these guys get to go after it, I want them to hold themselves accountable and not essentially try to perform perfectly, but train with that mindset. So that way, when they get into the game, they're falling back on their training versus, training to be average. And then when they struggle, they're falling below that mark.
Yeah.
And the other tagline or slogan, go unnoticed, that's a big one for snappers specifically because, as a player, we don't want our names in newspapers, on social media, because the only time, or not the only time, but a majority of the time, we're only in there because we screwed up. Snapper did something bad, threw it over the head, bounced a snap, you're getting publicity. So we want to go unnoticed. We don't want fans to know our names. If they do, it's usually not a great thing. So I have a lot of like black on black imagery and clothing and gear just to kind of reinforce that motto to these guys and just to make sure that they know if they do chase perfection, they will go unnoticed in a good way.
No, I really like that, and I feel like that's the only time someone notices a snapper is when they do poorly.
Right. Well, it's rare, but every once in a while you see like a good piece on a snapper, like, hey, this guy's been working hard, is not screwed up, so let's give him some social media love, or an article about him. Um,
Right.
we like to see those pieces. We can be noticed for that.
There's a great clip from the snapper from Tennessee when he's on punt cover,
Yeah, he
just
went
like a week
down,
ago. That was a great snap. It
swatted
was
the
a
ball
great,
back
where
for
he,
him.
yeah, clicked it back in. That was good.
Absolutely.
And then what's the other? This like watching these guys like run down the field and like they're so like hungry to make the tackle too. I think that's one of the coolest things too is like now that I'm noticing more, like they like I've seen it in high school for sure, where guys can barely snap the ball back, or if they snap it well, they can almost never move. They can never move their body after they snap it. And then you see college, and the college snappers, they're all really, for the most part, dialed in as far as their snaps. I mean, they might have a little bit of a high one or a little bit of a low one, but they're really good. But then, and that's like a 50-50 thing. Like some of the guys run down the field, some of the guys are, not really that good. So I think it's still sort of morphing, sort of transitioning, but transitioning. But I feel like that's where it's headed. It's headed to like that's going to be a super athlete who also specializes in snapping.
Well, and I think the standard just keeps getting raised as well. The competition is higher, the standards are higher. Coaches are expecting more of snappers. So in the past, it was like, I don't care what you look like, how tall you are, just get the ball back there, and we're happy. To now, coaches can be pickier because there are better athletes that are snapping. So there's a bigger market. I was just watching an article right before this call. There's a 6'7" snapper in high school, looks pretty good. Good for him. And he looks like he can move well. So coaches have like these big tight end bodies. It's not just, like I snapped because I couldn't play another position. That's not the only athlete anymore. So there's definitely a range out there.
Right. For sure. With regards to the positioning and the way that people put it in there, like so in high school, like almost always where, play a different position. In college, they might play a position, they might not. They might have been a situation like you where they start out in a position and they say, "Hey, let's not do that." And they have other like the bigger teams. They're like, "No, you're just a snapper." And then the NFL, it holds a single position just for a snapper. I mean, there's a 53-man roster, and every single one of them has a long snapper. That's it. So I definitely feel like the higher you get up, the more it's recognized. Like one of the things I noticed too is like you're almost never going to see a captain of the football team as a high school player be a captain of the football team as a snapper. I mean, yes, unless he plays another position. But like in college, I see it all the time because I follow a lot of these guys. Those guys are often picked up as, captains, which I think is really cool. So, like, I think part of it, has to do with like the recognition as it goes up. Do you feel like that's kind of how it is? Like high school, they still don't really recognize the position.
I think so. I think it's I guess it's more about their priorities. So at the high school level, you don't have to be great to get a punt off, right? Like teams aren't scheming you too hard. You can be pretty average and get away with it, right? So coaches maybe don't know what they have until somebody sucks and they don't have a great snapper. So they
True.
probably don't value it very well. At the college level, though, people are scheming. If your snapper's not great, you're going to get punts blocked. You're going to struggle. So I think coaches are starting, at least now, to start to value this position a little bit more. And at the NFL level, absolutely, you can't have a bad snapper, or the games aren't going to be won. People aren't going to be happy. Fans are you're going to hear it. So it's definitely just that growth in the position where, yeah, there's not a lot of time spent on it in the high school level. I know a lot of coaches are like, yeah, we give our guys 5 minutes before practice or 10 minutes afterwards to work on it. And that's really not sufficient if you want somebody that's going to be good at it.
Right.
Whenever I talk to high school coaches or college coaches, basically you got to find a guy that's hungry to do it and wants to do it. You could find your best athlete who would absolutely kill it if you put time into it. But if he doesn't put that time into it, he's not going to see that success. You're not going to see that success. So there's definitely a trade-off there for sure.
Do you think that, like, let's go into recruiting with this position? Obviously, if you're like a three-star cornerback or, wide receiver, like you're going to get offers like galore. There are a couple of like rating systems right now for snappers, and like, so like JT's a 4.5 star. I think if he went through the Cole system, he'd probably be like a 5 star. But like, they don't treat the 5 star snappers as the same as like a 3 star wide receiver. Why do you think that it's such a valuable position and they do realize it? Why do you think there's a disconnect on the recruiting side of it? In other words, like, why do you think that like, so let me back up. A lot of these kickers, punters, snappers, they're very wanted. They're very wanted. They're very desired, especially if they're good. But yet they're still not getting scholarships. Like, almost across the nation, you're going to get a walk on, and then you're going to get maybe 2 years, 3 years of you having to pay out of pocket to be there before you might earn a scholarship. Why do you think there's such a disconnect on that? They know it's important, but they don't want to pay for it, is what it comes down to. How does that, what do you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely think there's a couple factors here. I think the star system is a little diluted. I think the transfer portal has definitely played a big role in not wanting to pay a high school kid to come in and make, and possibly have success or possibly not. That you're kind of rolling the dice on a younger guy. So I think a lot of these coaches are going to look first towards the transfer portal for someone who's proven, that's maybe just looking for a new opportunity, maybe a graduate program or just a change of scenery. And then they're going to kind of go through and trickle through. And I think high school guys, unfortunately, are getting like the last round of that where, hey, we didn't really find a transfer guy, or, our backup guy was good enough. And then now we're going to get to the high school kids. So they're kind of getting the last bit of it. But I still see things happening for high school kids. It's just a little fewer and far between. So I don't think it's completely crushed for them, but there's definitely a little bit of disparity in that regard. So I think, I don't know if there's anything's going to change soon with that, especially the transfer portal is still going to be a thing. Scholarships have been happening more and more, and there's new rules coming out with roster limits and scholarships and things like that. And I guess a lot of this time, we've just been kind of holding on, just waiting to see what does the NCAA say or do, and what are these teams going to do, and what's it going to look like. So we've been kind of just going with the flow, trying to figure things out as they announce new things.
Right. Right. And again, like, I think you're alluding to, like, the NCAA is supposed to talk about this week. I think it's Wednesday. They're supposed to like reaffirm that they want to go from 135 man rosters to 105 man rosters. Like, right now they can carry 135. They can scholarship 85. So they have 50 walk-ons, either preferred or just straight walk-ons. They want to move that down to 105, but they want to increase that number to 105 scholarships. And so I do think it's sort of a step in the right direction. I do feel bad for the 30 walk-ons across the nation on every school that might end up, somewhere else or not at all. And I
Right.
do feel for them, but I do feel like, it's definitely a change for the better. I think that, you know, and again, because my kid's a snapper, I can tell you, like, it feels weird when you see a guy who gets $11 million in NIL and then sits on the bench for 3 years. And then you got a kid who literally is out there helping, like, let's just call it a kicker, right? Because that's more obvious. Like, there was a kid that I met, nice guy, who was the kicker at USC. And he had played the whole year for them as the kicker and won games for them, like over, like, like late game winning field goals. And he still didn't have a scholarship. And USC is like $65,000 a year. And I'm like, he gets nothing, but the other guy who gets $11 million in NIL is not even starting. So I do feel like there's a disparity, and hopefully they will rectify that as time goes along.
Yeah, and I don't even know like the full argument for cutting it, but, whatever the case may be. But I know from the snapping position, it's definitely it it could be good, it could be bad. I know, like, being a Badger fan, growing up in Wisconsin, most of those guys that came into the program and became stars started off as walk-ons, and they were a walk-on, built their way up, they earned a scholarship, and now they're playing in the NFL. And so I don't want to see that go away, but I also don't know what the other side of that story is going to look like, So my first thought is those guys help build teams, and they're hungry and they earn their way in. On the other side, I'm all for like paying these players because they're there, they're working, they're essentially a commodity for these schools. But yeah, I think a big chunk of these guys are going to just not be on teams anymore, or they could trickle down to different levels. I just know a lot of these guys they don't want to. They were at a big school. They don't want to drop down a level. They like where they're at. So I'm just, once again, curious to see how it all shakes out.
I think that's a really good point. Is the walk-ins are such a valuable contribution, because those guys bring hustle, and it's not that hustle doesn't exist in the other guys, but it's just like having somebody always push you from behind, like, hey, listen, you drop the ball, I'm going to come right behind you and pick it up. You know what I mean?
They're
Those
trying
kinds of
to
things.
like,
I
take
think
your
that's
job.
good for football. I think it's good for team sports in general.
Yeah, yeah, and
What was
agreed.
that? I'm sorry.
Well, I just
Yeah.
said, like, as a walk-on, like, you're trying to take that guy's job every day. Like, your job is to try to earn his job, and his job is to keep his job. So, everybody's motivated in that way. And I don't think that's gonna go away essentially, but like there was definitely an underdog kind of a grittiness to being a walk-on. Like, it's just a different lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. So, when it comes to recruiting, like you've built a reputation for yourself now, you're starting to get phone calls from coaches. Obviously, there's people who, look at Cole's ratings, there's people who look at Rubio ratings, then you're getting phone calls. You don't have a rating system, but people are still reaching out to you. Do you feel like there needs to be a little bit more of a standardized rating that a kid can get over like just kind of like this general, like I feel like this is a good kid, like is there something, because it's such a specialized position. I guess what I'm saying is like, is there room to like come up with some more standardized ratings for these kids so it's not diluted?
So I think it's the hard thing for snappers is, let's like you could be a really good snapper, but you're short. Right now, nobody really takes into account like the height, the weight, the athleticism part and adds that into the ranking or rating. I think it would, I don't know, how do I say it? I think it would like be demoralizing for a lot of athletes who are great snappers, but maybe they just can't fix their height or their weight, like, so right now, like there's just a lot of athletes who are 4.5 or 5 or 6-star snappers that are pretty good, but maybe not college ready. So I think there's just a lot of like fluff in the snapping world that probably doesn't need to be there. But at the same time, I think if people were honest with athletes, would they still be super excited to continue to go to these camps and get rankings and ratings? I don't know. So I think there's something there that these companies built these businesses and this is what they're doing and they're having a lot of success. So why change it? And
Right.
I don't really have an interest in doing any rankings or ratings. I'm strictly interested in helping people get better. So I don't know if somebody came in and tried to be a competitor with them, if they would have a lot of success, maybe over time, but it does seem like people have tried to come in and do something similar and they just stay smaller or they come and go. And, they're the couple big players in the market just seem to kind of just stay steady. So yeah, I don't know. I think it is what it is right now. I think a lot of coaches and people and players see it for what it is. I know a lot of coaches who call me, even if they're looking at like a 5-star or 4-star athlete, they want to see these guys at their camp. So they could bring in a bunch of athletes, 4, 3, 5, whatever star athletes. And if there's somebody that's not even ranked that comes in and wins it, they're going to now be focused on that kid. They want to see these people in action. So while a ranking or rating can be helpful, it's not the end all. And I think that's kind of the fear of a lot of parents and athletes is that they have to get a ranking to be seen. And I always am very upfront about it. Like, it's not a bad thing to go to. You can absolutely go to a camp and get ranked and rated. But I think a lot of these companies want you to believe that they are it. If you don't come here, you're not going to play football. Out of all of my NFL players, none of them were ever ranked or rated. Out of my CFL players, nobody was ever ranked or rated. So, with that being said, like, it's not the only path. So I'm really big on basically hustling yourself, knocking on doors, making phone calls, do whatever you can to market yourself. And if you got a ranking or rating, play it up, use it, and use the companies to help you promote yourself. But you can't just go get a ranking and just sit back and relax. Like, you're on a list, which is good. And I know some coaches go and utilize those lists to find guys in their area or the top guys on those lists. But if you're not in that top 20 guys, you're probably not getting that much interest. So we definitely need to make sure that either you're increasing that rating, or B, just making sure that you're putting in that work outside of that to make sure that people are seeing you, going to camps, making calls, things like that. So it's not a walk in the park for sure.
I know from my standpoint because I've been through this now. I mean, my kid's a senior. We're almost to the end of this. I don't know. I don't know exactly where his future lies at this point, but I will just say to anybody listening, if I could do it all over again, I would have spent more time with Coach Stelter and less time at these rankings camps. I'm not saying don't go to them. I'm not saying they don't provide some value. I think it is important for the kids to get out on a field with a bunch of other kids who do what they do and see like, oh, how do I compare to these kids? Like, like how size wise am I? How's that guy's, thing? But I can tell you that I have seen, the rankings aren't even consistent across the two platforms. Like if you're if you're a 4.5 star ranked at Rubio, you're probably 5 star ranked at Coles. And that's just, again, my opinion from being kind of like where it would be. So if I'm going for a star ranking, I'm probably going to go to Coles. That's what I'm looking for. I would tell you that like neither of them provide really instruction for the most part. I mean, that might be basic like instruction, or if you go to a regional camp, they might, try to make it look like instruction, but they're not like getting what they're going to get if they come to someone like you. So, um, like I said, if I could do it all over again, I would have spent less time at camps and more times in Wisconsin. That's just, my 2 cents on the whole thing. But
Yeah.
it's not like I said, not to
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think everybody's got good intentions. I think everybody wants to be helpful, and each the big companies they want the best for these guys, but it's also a business, and so
Right.
like I said earlier, I'm focused only on instruction. This the main focus for these bigger companies is in rankings and ratings. So we just got to make sure that you have your ducks in line. So I'm very open with guys to make sure that they're going and making sure that if they're looking to get exposed, they're ready for that exposure. And so because they might be exposed for not being ready. So the first thing, if you're getting into long snapping, I don't think I would recommend going to an event right away that's geared towards exposure. You need to be working on developing first. So develop yourself. And then once you feel like you're ready, you're snapping well, you feel like, you want to do some competition stuff, then maybe now it's the time to get after. But I do see a lot of athletes go the opposite way. They start in the camps and then they find themselves hitting like a wall. And then they're like, hey, I'm not getting any better. Now we have to go in and kind of reevaluate, what's been going on and how they've been training in order to kind of overcome some of those obstacles, whether it's bad habits or just different thought processes through the snapping.
I would echo that as well. We tried to do the camps in the beginning, and again, I think you can get known for like I think they give you leeway. Like if you're a freshman and you go to a camp and you're not killing it, like they're like he's a freshman. They're probably not even really looking at you for the most part. But like sophomore year, a little bit less. But if you go as a junior to these camps, and not I'm not talking about the ratings camps. I'm talking about like going to an actual college camp, where college scouts are looking at you. If you're a junior and you go to like 6 camps and you're not where you need to be, like you're just going to get known for not being where you need to be. So I really do think, again, if I could do it all over again, I would have spent his 8th grade year, his freshman year, his sophomore year, much more time in person with someone like yourself. Well, I mean, for me personally, it would be with you for sure. But like, I mean, not everybody probably has access to you. So what I would say is like getting that access to someone who really truly knows what they're doing and provides instruction. And then once you feel like you've got it down to where like, hey, I can compete, then start going to, in my opinion, I would rather see you go to like a regional camp, like at a college. Like I know, like we went to a thing for Brandon Huffman, who's been on the show. He's a executive recruiter for 24/7 Sports, and we went to his camp in the Northwest, and they had 12 Division I special teams coaches standing there while these kids are throwing the ball, and probably another 8 like Division II to Division III schools there. I mean, there was good exposure. But like if you're going to go to a camp like that, you're going to get tons of exposure. It doesn't matter they don't care what your star rating is. Like they're not looking at your star rating. They just want to know like, can this kid throw? So I would say like if really like just echoing what Coach Stelter says, like focus on your performance, your individual performance, and get that dialed in. Then once you feel like you're dialed in, you can go compete. Then go compete. You know what I mean? And if you want to go to get a rating, that's great. But I would recommend really getting really good at what you do before you get a rating. So
Right. Agreed. So, just making sure these guys are on the right track from the beginning, I think is really important.
yeah. So tell us what you're working on right now. I know that I think of special teams as like we're looking at getting kids to college because that's where I'm at in life. But you've got kids in college they're trying to go pro. So tell us a little bit about what you got going on with those guys.
Yeah, so right now it's a little bit of a slower time for me in the year just because everybody's with their team, they're reported, they're playing their seasons. So in-person stuff is a little bit slower. So right now I'm getting ready for my annual pro prep camp. So every year in January I go down to Tampa, Florida. I hold this pro prep camp. Essentially, it's a great opportunity for guys to come in, college, draft eligible, or free agent long snappers only. We get together, we learn about what it's like to be a pro. I bring in pro athletes to talk to the guys. I bring in agents to talk to the guys. I bring in mobility specialists. So we have a good group of people that give these guys information to let them know, like, hey, once you're done with the college level, this is what the next level is going to be like. We do some instruction with snapping to kind of see and show them how to hold themselves to a higher standard. And a big chunk of that camp is how do I learn how to snap and protect? Because the next level, we go from college where you probably snapping and releasing, maybe doing some protection, to the NFL or CFL level where it's all protection. And it's not only different with protection, but the intensity, the size of the athlete, the stunts that you're going to see are a lot more intricate and a lot harder to protect with. So that's one of the bigger things that we cover. So the last few years, we've had about 80 long snappers come through. I think we've had about 30 opportunities come out of those events, which is really cool. So every year we just keep getting bigger and bigger, which is awesome. So that's coming up January 3rd through 5th. If you're a college snapper, draft eligible, or free agent, you can come on out to that. The other thing that we're introducing this year is a snapper specific combine training. So I've partnered up with Joshua Cuthbert, who is a former long snapper from Louisiana Tech. He's now a strength coach. He trains Kittle from the 49ers in the offseason, along with a bunch of other NFL players. But him and I are going to go down to Austin, Texas and hold a combine train. So essentially, if you don't know much about combine training in general, a lot of these NFL prospects will move across the country. They'll move to Arizona or to the East Coast or the West Coast. They're going all over these places to a gym.
Yeah.
They're shelling out thousands and thousands of dollars to get housed and trained and fed and recovery and seen by doctors and all these things. So it's a huge expense. And a lot of these times, if you're a draft prospect that's higher up on the draft board, your agent's going to cover that because the return rate for them is pretty good. They'll cover this. They know they're going to get paid back in the future based on the contract you sign. For snappers, that's not really a thing. It's really a gamble for an agent to take on a long snapper because you might pick up what you perceive as the best long snapper in this draft class. He might not get anything. You might pick up a snapper and bam, he hits, but his contract's still not as big as, an offensive lineman, a receiver, quarterback. So essentially, some snappers have tried to make those happen, go to a combine training, but like I said, it's expensive. So what we're doing is we're putting together kind of a hybrid of a combine training where they're going to come to Austin, Texas for a week to be in person with us, field work, strength work, mobility work, speed work, all together. Basically, their housing, their food, their training, everything's covered while they're there. And then after that week, we ship them home with A, the knowledge, but B, they get access to us virtually. So instead of moving away from your resources, maybe you're living at home with your family, maybe you're getting a free gym back home, maybe the food's cheaper where you're getting all this help from your resources around you. You don't have to move across the country to make that happen. So we're excited to give this a go. It's our launching point this year. We've got a lot of good feedback. So we're excited just to see how it shakes out.
Great idea. I really like that. That would actually be really good for high school players too, by the way.
I'm sure. Yeah. And you know what? I've had a lot of guys hit me up about doing my pro prep camp for high school athletes, doing a college prep, and that might be in the mix. We'll see. I don't love doing camps. I don't love getting
You don't want to
into
be a camp director.
I don't want to be a camp director. I don't like the organizational. It's stressful
Yeah.
for me to do all this, but I see the benefit. So that's why I do it. But yeah, that's not been my goal. I know some people, they love the act of setting up the camp and getting all these things together. And A, I don't have a lot of experience doing it. So I'm gaining that as I go and learning as I go. But B, it's not a fun thing for me. I hate calling to get insurance and calling to set up fields and getting all these people. And so it's a necessary evil at this moment. But once I get down
Yeah.
there and I start to coach and I get all these guys that are hungry for knowledge, it makes it worth it for sure. So that's the cool part.
Well, if I could give a little plug, if I could give a little plug for the camp, if you're a snapper in college right now and you think you're NFL capable, right? You think it, like, don't worry about what school you go to. We just got through hearing Coach went to a Division III school and got invited to the Jets. Luke was what, William and Mary?
Yeah, FCS linebacker, ended up
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah, at William and Mary, which is a really small FCS. I mean, it's still FCS, but it's very small. Jacob Obenmoyer, he was Northern Colorado. Until I started looking into recruiting, I didn't even know Northern Colorado had a team.
Right.
So, like if you're at a small school and you're capable, you think you can do this, like this is your opportunity. This is when you would go like get your chance to like be seen. And again, like people call coach and they ask him what they think about guys and his opinion matters. So I would say like if you're on the fence and you're like, I would love to go pro, but I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get seen. There's a great opportunity to get seen.
Well, and the
So
other thing I'd like to add to that too is that even if you don't foresee yourself going pro, a lot of the guys that come to this event have aspirations, but they're not sure. I get a lot of younger guys. They're freshmen in college, they're sophomores in college. Come and get experience being around guys like that. So you're not waiting until your senior year and then thinking about, oh, I do want to do something like this. So it is for exposure and training to pursue that next level, but it's also a great way just to kind of see where you're at and give yourself a little expansion on what are you currently doing and how could you grow. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room to get athletes of every shape, size, level to an event like this, just to make sure that they're pushing themselves in the right direction.
So what if someone says, like, Coach, I can't go to Wisconsin. Like, how am I gonna see you? I can't get on a plane and go to Wisconsin. Plus it's cold there.
Yeah, not always it's cold. We get some warm times up here as well. But I'm glad you asked. So essentially, I operate a virtual training. It's the most consistent way that you can get training. So your son JT and I have been working virtually for a while now. And when you said he went from eighth grade to a senior, I feel like it's not been that long, but man, time's flying. But the virtual route is a great route for anybody because you don't have to fly. You don't have to pay for hotels and food and all the travel expenses. And essentially, what it gets you is either a 6 month or 12-month package that allows you to meet with me consistently. We can trade film consistently. We install drills. We make sure that you're prioritizing your needs. So every opportunity we have to kind of dig into your film. So, for example, when JT sends me film, I can go through and analyze it, make sure that he's focused on the right thing, he's making the adjustments he needs, and then able to apply those in practice as well. So once I give him feedback, he's getting me more film and then I can give him feedback on that. So there's a consistency part that I think a lot of guys struggle with. And I do think a lot of guys struggle with, hey, I tried virtual lessons before, or they have like a negative connotation with virtual in general because they had a class before. It's not a virtual class. It's literally us talking to each other about your interest, which is long snapping. So it's not me droning on about boring stuff that you don't care about. It's asking questions. How do you feel about things? What are you implementing? And I think that definitely is a lot different than people are expecting.
Yeah, I think that like when people hear virtual, especially when it comes to our time, they're thinking maybe that you're going to get on a Zoom meeting with them or something. And I know that you do a Zoom meeting once a month with virtual people just to kind of talk about where we're at, the state of the union, so to speak. But just for those who are listening, it's a lot like he uses a platform where you send the film and then he sends it back to you like John Madden would. It's doctored. He's talking over it. He's circling things and pointing and stuff. And then beyond that, he says, "Hey, based on what I've seen, hey, these are the 2 or 3 drills I think you need to work on until we meet again," which again is like the next week or whatever. And so I feel like virtual is kind of not like doesn't give it the true meaning of what you're doing for people. But what I would say is like there are very few long snapping coaches in the nation, period. Most special teams coordinators don't actually know anything about snapping. That's not to their detriment. It's just, again, how the system's built. They are typically the tight ends coach or maybe their middle linebacker coach, and they've also got that as a thing. And what I've noticed is, especially in the college ranks, they will go get an assistant, and the assistant will specialize in the snapping, and then they'll get another assistant, and that guy specializes in the field goal kickers or the punters or whatever. But most special teams coordinators, it's a lot like what Coach was talking about. They don't really know, like, hey, if you do this with your arms or you do this with your hands, you're gonna fix this. They're just like, you got to get it higher. I mean, that's the extent of the knowledge. So you really truly need that's college level, and to some degree even NFL level.
Yeah.
So if you think your high school coach knows about snapping, it's probably not true. Like he probably has a base knowledge, and that's about it. So I'm not like high school coaches. I'm just saying like I've seen the difference. I know like the level of competency at each level, and it really does make a difference to call somebody and say, hey, I threw the ball and this happened to me. What do you see? And it's like, I noticed with your elbows you were doing this and you don't normally do that, or those kinds of things. You have to be. So let me back up for a second. So with JT specifically, when people talk about the long snapping position, it's a technician job. It is not a brute force job like a linebacker or a fullback or even an offensive lineman. I mean, if you're athletic and you can push people around, it's going to help you for sure. But it is truly a technician job. It is like I would say in adult life, it transitions very similar to a golf swing. There's a lot of people who can golf, but not well. You can learn golf in a couple of lessons, but you're not going to be good at it. But there are some guys who just have this perfect seamless swing, and then you go, oh well, I can do that, and then you realize it's 172 different mechanics all working at the same time, and that's what I feel like snapping is. So I
I
feel
think
like
that's
you
great.
need someone who's going to be able to go, hey, like just like if you want to be better at golf, you got to get golf lessons. You can't just get better watching YouTube videos.
Right. Well, I think
So
that's a great
anyway, that's
example.
my 2 cents on that.
I do think there's a lot of people who would say, yeah, I can get better at golf just by watching YouTube videos and going out and I'll just get a lot of reps. Then, and you know what? Some people they might actually see some pretty good progress there. But at the same time, like you're not learning and putting into action all these things you could be. So you don't know what you don't know. And so whenever I'm talking to an athlete and I talk to a lot of snappers pretty consistently, guys I work with, guys I don't work with. And I think a lot of the times guys that I don't work with are maybe in the back of their mind thinking, yeah, it looks cool, but I don't know if I need it. I'm not for everybody. I really want to work with guys that are hungry to improve. And there's absolutely a lot of guys out there who are happy. They're happy where they're at. They're doing fine. They're not screwing up. And that's where they want to be. And I think I've had guys in the past that kind of have that thought process and then they get to the college level and then they're like, oh crap, I need to have another level. I need some more urgency. I need to do something to either A, win the job or keep my scholarship. So there's definitely a lot that goes into that I think you don't know until you get there, or until it just hits you in the face.
And I would say like JT started 8th grade, and I felt like there was a good time for him. He was ready for it at the time. But I remember talking to you at the time. That was probably the youngest kid you had ever coached, and I know since then it's been way different than that. But when do you think kids should start like saying, "Hey, I think I need more help. I really want to like get better at this."
It's a good question because, early on, I was open to working with, any level and I still will. What I've noticed though is that if I get a kid that's really young, I don't really even care for them to know what they're doing. If they like to do it, work on it. There's definitely some drills you could throw in and have fun with it. But I've had other younger kids where I can tell they're not motivated as much as their parents are motivated. And so I think, for my ideal client currently is going to be at least in high school. If there's a talented eighth grader that knows it's what he wants to do and put the work in, that's great. But I don't think that's as common as people might think. A lot of eighth grade kids, I still want them to enjoy the position. I don't want it to be a job for them yet. And I know even at the highest level, I want these guys to have fun doing it. And if they feel like it's a chore, if they feel like it's not as fun as it used to be, then they're not doing something right. They're repping too much. They're not focused on the right things. We want to make sure that we're focused on the process and not just the product. And if you don't enjoy that process, then it's going to be really hard to enjoy that product or being in the game, being a part of the team. So once again, it's not for everybody. So that may be something that guys figure out down the road is they think they really like it or they really want it until they're in college, waking up at 4 a.m. They're busting their butt in the weight room. They're traveling all the time. All these things are hard. And what they saw was game days look cool, but they didn't see all that work that went into it. And that might change their perspective. But either way, you don't know until you get into it, right? So I think it's everybody's got to figure it out for themselves.
That's good. I like that though. I like, like I feel like sometimes when you talk to people and they're like, "Hey, what's an ideal client?" And I think sometimes you get the answer of like people who have money. And you
No,
don't want that. You want someone who's honest and like, "Hey, listen, I want to work with people that want to be worked with. I want to work with people that have goals and things like that." I think that's really important, and I really appreciate that you said it that way because I know that you've got a lot of integrity. I really thought that I honestly, when I asked you a question, I kind of thought that you would give, an answer that was full of integrity. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it.
Anything else you want to talk about before we head out?
You know what? I know you had mentioned this earlier, but I really like to talk about when I was in high school, nobody told me I could be a long snapping coach. And you got counselors that try to help people find a track and a path. I think mine told me I could be a cake decorator or a doctor or like a fire.
Okay.
Like you take an aptitude test, and I think mine said cake decorating was a great job for me in the future. Or they're like, hey, here are the standard jobs. But there was not a lot of push to like, hey, you could do whatever you want, or there's all these other options. So I'm very intrigued whenever I have a client that comes in and their parents are with. I would say a majority of the time, their parents do something I've never heard of. Like, oh wow, that's interesting, and I'm curious about how they got into it or what that looks like. And a lot of these people seem to enjoy their jobs and make a lot of money, and they do well. And so that's just something I was never excited about work. Like, what do I want to do when I grow up? I guess I have to work. I never really enjoyed working for other people. So I think that's just something to consider. If you're a younger athlete or student and you don't know what to do, like research. There's so many things you could do. Find a passion of yours and see how you could make money being around it at the very least. Everybody is going to be a great coach. But if you like football, there's so many ways you can be around it. I've met a lot of people who got into training, they got into recruiting, they got into administration, they got into so many different avenues, and they're around the team. They're on the field. Like so that's just one example, but I think that's just something I like to be able to spread awareness of is just make sure that you're not just going about and just living that one track life. Like if you aren't happy doing or thinking about what you could be doing in just a basic way, research, get around, talk to other people. The opportunities are endless.
I am so thankful you said that. Like one of the core tenets of the reason I put this podcast together was I wanted people to know that there are all kinds of different ways to make money and that like healthy wealth is really it's about health, it's about wealth, but it's really about the idea that like I don't want people to be robots. Like I feel like our society is fairly, geared towards like, hey, you're going to sit here at this time and move here at this time. You're going to eat lunch at this time. You're going to talk to this guy and he's going to tell you what to do. It's very robotic. And so I love it when people like you like completely just invent something that never existed and you've been rewarded for that. It's been a good business for you, but the thing is you're also rewarding so many other people doing it. I love what I do. I love being a financial advisor. I love helping people achieve their goals of retirement and passing wealth on to their kids and stuff like that. It's not something I thought I could even do when I was a kid. I thought you had to go to like USC School of Wharton or be born part of the Rockefeller line or something, but like there's all sorts. So I think that's a really good point to make is like if you love football and you're like 5'7" and 142 pounds, there's still spots for you. It may not be on the field, it might be off the field, but it was kind of funny when we were at our recruiting trip this last weekend. They were doing their warm ups, and the quarterbacks were ripping the ball to these. I don't think they're just assistants, right? I don't know if they're grad assistants or regular assistants, but they're ripping, and the kids are catching them. And I'm thinking, like, they're not even wearing gloves, man. That's crazy. And JT was like, I would love to be one of those kids. And I was like, what? Really? Like, that seems like I wouldn't want that at all. I wouldn't want a guy throwing a ball at me 100 miles an hour. But like, again, like just to be around the program, people, there's lots of jobs for those guys. And I think that's a really good opportunity for people who are listening is think outside the box, like not everybody has to be what'd you say, firefighter or
Right?
baker, you know what I mean? Like we don't have to all be that. We can be whatever we want. So
Exactly. Well, and you know what?
that's pretty cool.
Renting this job for myself, it's a lot different than my teaching job I had. You go to a teaching job, you work in the morning, you get done, you're done with work. Now I don't have hours. I work early in the morning, I work all day, I work at night. But the rewarding part of it, helping athletes and helping people get where they want to be, that's the payoff. So I might work more hours, but it's flexible. I enjoy it. It's not like work. So I think there's a difference too. I think different people are motivated by different things, and some people might want a job where they can just go in, make money, clock out, be done. And I know people like myself are motivated by just I need to have something to work on and to do, and that just motivates me a little bit more. So yeah, either way, I think once again, there's just a lot of different options out there. So go research it and get after it if you want to.
I love that. That's really good information. That's great. That's a great way to end this podcast. Go be something that you want to be. Don't let anybody else tell you what you want to be. That's pretty cool. I like that a lot. So, well, Coach, I appreciate your time. I always love talking to you. And if there's anything I can do to help you and promote your business, I definitely want to. My son is a better person. That actually goes into like kind of what you're saying. There was about probably a year ago when I said to JT, I said, if you never make the NFL, if you don't even get a scholarship somewhere to play ball, like if this is the end of your career after high school, I can tell you that I know you will be successful because I've watched you work. And I know that like hard work does pay off, and it may not pay off in this avenue, but you now have the skill sets. you know what coaching's about, you know what like drills are about, you will be able to get yourself to the next level of whatever you decide to do. And I think that's sometimes hidden in all of the stuff you're doing. The distraction is hidden that you're building a work ethic. And I think that's really cool that you provide that for kids.
And I really hope that guys take that away from this because I want them to be a better person because the unfortunate reality is most guys won't play in the NFL. So every level you go up, it gets narrower and narrower at the tops. At the very least, I want them to learn how to hold themselves to a higher standard, how to push through adversity, and how to just improve themselves consistently. Those will benefit them no matter where they go in life. And I think that's just a byproduct of this training and what I do. And it's just kind of cool. It's cool to think about.
Yeah. What's your preferred way for people to get a hold of you, coach?
Yeah. So if people want to reach out, social media is probably the best way. If they go on Instagram at Special Teams U, probably one of the best ways. That's where I post the most anyway. Check out some of my videos, some of my content I post there, and then they can absolutely reach out to me there as well.
Okay. And then we got the website. I'll make sure to link to your Instagram and your website.
Website
Anything else you can think of?
specialteamsview.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm everywhere. But Special Teams U. Just search that, Google it. You'll be able to find me.
That's great. That's great. And just in case you're a recruiter and this video happens to go viral, I'm also going to stick my son's Twitter in the profile in the description. So
There you
just so
go.
you know, you never know, coach.
Absolutely. You never know.
So, all right. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your time, coach. It's always great to talk to you.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to everyone for listening. If you like this show and you enjoy the content, please do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, tell us what else you want us to talk about, share it with your friends. All those kinds of signals tell all the algorithms out there that we're doing a good job and that you like what we're doing, that you support us, we'll support you, and hopefully we'll just build a better world all together. So thank you for your time, and everybody have a great day. Thanks, Coach.